Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 116 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Make sure you empty your pockets because it'll braid on the stone and you'll have holes for every one of your pants where whatever's in your pockets rubbed on the stone, created a hard spot, and then they fall through your pants. It's just a train wreck, so it's one more habit. During my apprenticeship, I commented with someone that that was still back during film cameras, when you took pictures of stuff, clicked, and then when your roll was full, you took it to the camera store and you spent money to get the pictures developed to see if you were a competent photographer or just a clod that was taking pictures. And I fell in the second category. I had an old 35mm camera that I bought at the Salvation Army in Knoxville, Tennessee, and was all thrilled to have it. It was really cool, and I didn't know a thing in the world about using that camera. And I took an awful lot of bad pictures trying to figure it out. F-stops and light meters and the nuances of trying to photograph granite with all the crystals that flash and reflect if you actually light it hard. And so they wash everything out, so you have to take it under muted light conditions. I don't know what the technical word is. But anyways, and I think we may be getting into that kind of a phase here. Just because there's going to be, I'm going to be doing the same things for a long time, and I don't know that it's going to be, I don't know how the videos will progress in terms of taking video, and if this will be ready for upload in a day or two, or if it'll be 2 weeks because I'm just doing the same thing. I wanted to do a little bit to cover this next point, because what I'm going to do now is I will take literally that ruler, just a straight edge, and I will go on my model. I'm going to move it where I can reach her better, and I'll just literally put a straight edge to another point, and then I'll cut this next point, and then I can clean everything off between them and know that those 2 points, there's nothing between them. And the same thing over here. Do that and get that defined and start working on defining that wing. That's what you do when you enlarge something, is that you have to put your points in, and you can shoot a lot of points in there, but points that may be an inch, well, on this model, just for instance, points that are 2 inches apart on this model are going to be 3 inches apart on this job, and that means I've got to invent 1 inch of information, of detail, that I can't produce directly from that model. And that 1 inch will span between those 2 inches, and but it won't, I don't know what it is. So I've got to work with that. And I wanted to, watching the last video, working on it, talking about the twins, one of the hardest things you're ever going to carve are matching pieces, okay? And the smart thing to do, which, is basically what Andy did. What I learned carving ice, but I had to carve 100 one time for this woman's 100th birthday, a 1, a 0, and a 0, and I had to do 2 almost 4 foot tall zeros out of ice and matched. Boy, was that tough to get them cut out and penetrated square and same thickness, and so they look good. It's really tough, way harder than you think if you've never done it. So when you're doing multiple figures like the twins or something like that, it's really smart to put together the pieces dimensionally to get all the main pieces, the main points, and the main information produced, and then finish the detail, like the drapery and the fabric and the hands and stuff, all these specific details finish that simultaneously. And what that'll do is that you will be carving that detail. It's hard to put it into words. You'll be carving that detail all at once instead of carving it on one and then going to the second one and trying to match it, because matching stuff's really hard. Anything you got to match, it's usually going to either be better or worse. It's rarely going to be the same exact quality, the same exact everything. Even if it's only with you looking at it, go, yeah, I buggered it up right there, and I know, and it drives you nuts. If you do it simultaneously to where you produce the same detail on each, to the same level of detail on each piece at the same time, as long as you don't go too far, and ruin it, which, that happens too if you're not paying attention. But if you carve them both to finish and finish them at the same time, they're a lot more likely to look like they match and not like one came from someone that was sober and the other came from some idiot that'd been drinking all day. Because a lot of times you'll carve that second one if you've got to match the first one, and it's really tough. So, but I'll show you a little bit here. What I'm going to do with this next point, I'm going to set up my compasses. First of all, I'm going to swing a compass from that point to the tip of the wing, just laterally. I'm going to get a rough idea on where it is so I can mark it on the stone to see how much I got to take off to access it. And I'll probably do the other side the same way. And I'm just going to take my big saw and I'm going to cut right in here. And that's appropriate. That should be appropriate. I'm going to cut in right here, and then I'll cut in over here and back here, and I'll just advance this opening, and I'll do the same thing on both sides, and I'll just work it back. Then I can cut that point and go up and put points all the way up on that feather, all the way up here near the hand machine, and get this side all evacuated off. And the most of it will come off by sawing in and snapping it off. So it goes somewhat faster. So hang in there, watch videos, we'll see how this goes. Okay, take a look at this. This next wingtip right here and this wingtip here should be respectively approximately here and approximately here, somewhere in this area. So I'm just going to mark this off, and I'm going to lay into this with a saw, take it off down to this same level because I know that was safe and high, and we've got nothing below here. We're still out, we aren't into that elbow yet. We're still out in this area, so I can cut this off and I can have a whole bunch out there, and that's a big part of her wing opened up. But that's what I'm talking about. Once this is gone, this becomes our new straight reference, because this is still going to be gone. This is all detail for the fletching, for the feathers. This is our 8-inch background. So we've still got this much material here for detail. So we'll cut this off. We're going to be getting rid of this whole side in short order, and it's going to be gone. So we'll be in great shape. Let's make some dust, man. As I'm ripping this off, faster than I can video it, I wanted to, this is important, because this breaks really easy vertically. When we're out near an edge like this, it's really not worth risking striking down really hard and driving this, because this could easily hang on and pull or hit this and fracture it and blow create a big problem. Whether it knocks it off or it just cracks it. So when I took this second piece off, I thought after I hit it, I thought, I should have showed them that. I hit it kind of gentle a couple of times until I went from being solid to that talk. Remember that crack we talked about back on the base? We told you to listen to the stone. As soon as I heard it change tone, I stopped and I went like this. It broke it in, and it was very easy to break in because I'd already sawed under it But instead of pushing this and having this energy go down and potentially crack this, I just push it. See, in the corner here with the saw blade curve, you're never going to get as good unless you go past. So I went ahead and undercut it as deep as it goes, and then I sawed in a line about as deep as it could go. I hit it just a couple times just to start the crack. Then I went here and it just snaps and you stay right. You can hold it right there with your tool, just bang, pop, pop, hit it, and then you can lift it off. You don't have any risk. You diminish the risk of breaking this edge a lot. Okay, smart thing to do. Just a little bit of sawing later. I don't know, it's 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. I got that whole bunch knocked out. Now, if we had cut this out first, I'd cut that out without cutting this. See how easy it is? Take this rough side we worked off, cut this cut back, we cut this all back to the side here. We had this nice straight, perfect reference. We're going ahead and cut that panel. That panel right there is worth its weight in gold at this point. So now I just got to swing compasses and I'll mark a wingtip, mark a feather, tip of a feather and a tip of a feather, and we'll just keep going and we'll define that wing, and then we can move on, evacuate, you know, could literally cut the rest of this out down here. We can calculate our wing tip in here, where it flexes, where it flares up. Basically all we have to do is cut down to that point it, and we can shift it. We cut down to that point, you know, point it, and then we'll get that point, we can shift that point laterally about an inch. I'll go, probably not quite an inch, go about 3/4 of an inch, so it's high. We can get this whole side put together, and that side will be gone, and it'll be easier for us to reach the interior for us to do her body. All right, it's coming good. This is coming along pretty well. Oh well, it's down there, trust me. There's one foundation point and another point. Now, I've been checking these against the model as I go, and you should be able to look just from here. In our 8-inch background, see how perfectly flat and square that is? It's not, okay? We're gonna cut the stone straight and square. The background isn't critical. And, you know, we could have gone through and done a bunch of work to straighten and true it up. What's going to end up happening, because it's a little bit crooked there, I thought I should point this out. It's also a little bit crooked looking straight up. That's not straight. And that's inherent with doing any rubber model. So what's going to end up happening is that these feathers are going to be a little bit closer to this edge. They're going to be they may even end up being about this distance from the actual edge, as opposed to this being 2/3 of the distance. This may be the actual distance, because this is arbitrary. We're going to cut this edge on the stone where we want it. We want to make sure she's fully within the stone, and she will be. So, and the more she's raised, the better it'll look. I didn't go to crazy lengths to make sure that all of this was perfectly straight in terms of the plaster, because it doesn't have to be. We're fixing it. And what you're going to find is that if you buy a model or you have an antique model, a lot of times now, the old models, the DePrado models and everything that we always had around the studio, you know, that are for ecclesiastic, you know, out of the DePrado catalog or the A. DePrado Company catalog, you'll find that a lot of those have got, depending on if they're real ones or if they're copies, they may have real bad discrepancies in them. And you'll find out that drapery goes under one arm, under the arm, and it comes out, and they totally lose track of anatomy or things like that. You've got to be able to deal with it. Our goal is to make sure that this whole figure is within the stone, and she will be, okay? But I'm just keeping track that, you know, I know where I'm at, because right now, these are, you know, On the original clay, they're in a little bit further because of the way this bent when I cast it. But this is not a problem. We got 3-point shot already here in just, the last couple hours. And so we've done 2 points in 2 hours, an hour a point sometimes. But we could shoot ones in between these, and we've got a lot less stone to take off. Now, there's no reason right now to start hogging off all this stone between them. And that's what people like to do. They like to just strip it all off, and they want to see it right now. Just remember what I said about, surrendering volume. If for some reason we had a big disaster, I don't even know really at this point what that disaster would be, but if we had a big problem, these low spots could potentially be hidden between feathers. And if we still got material here, we can still do that. And so I don't foresee any problems like that. I'm going to continue working this down, and we'll work this edge off, and then we'll proceed into this towards the center of the stone to get to our midpoint, basically from, where everything would fall this way if we ran water on it. And we'll just slowly reveal her. And as we do, we'll take this away. It doesn't look like there's enough stone here to do a life-size figure, but we still got to take off another inch, and this mask can be very deceptive in terms of how you view the stone. And once we take that off and then go down in another 1.5 to 2 inches to go down beside her, it's really going to make this volume look a lot bigger. Okay, back to work. Like I said, once you open it up to a certain extent, it becomes a little bit faster because you kind of know where a point is. Understand that what we're doing with this enlargement, okay, is we're using these different references and these different measurements to estimate where this figure is in the stone. That's the whole point, because the pointing machine doesn't carve it for you. The compasses don't carve it for you. They tell you where you got to go, and then you got to carve it. And so, but they make it a lot easier than just carving it direct in terms of having things land where they're supposed to. You get used to carving stuff like this direct, and you do it for a living because you just get a picture and you just carve it, because they're not going to pay you to spend the time to point it. They just want it. And as long as it's not cockeyed, crooked, ugly, then it's golden. But this is about showing the pointing system and with compasses. And I'll try to include what I think really works and what really matters. Something that you'll find after you've gone nuts double checking stuff and checking it again and checking it again to make sure that your foundation points are perfect. And I don't mean okay, I mean that they're right. Once you do that, you start shooting your other points, and you'll branch out. Like this is the curve of the wing, and I can look and see the offsets that they're not in a perfect line. If you want to shoot them in a perfect line and your model suits that strategy, go for it. I mean, that's great. But as far as it being on a specific curve or line, we're going to shoot some of the folds because they're high points, and we're going to shoot those in the line or the contour that they represent. When you're carving, when you're cutting these points, I have a pretty good idea in terms of elevation with these points on the feathers, because I can look at the model, and I like having the model in the same, because the model's laying down on the stone, so I'm looking at the stone this way, and I can compare what I'm doing directly to the model and see how it looks, what it looks like, and where I should be. It isn't really a way. The only way you can really proof your dimensions when you swing your compasses and take a measurement and put them on the triangle is that they're accurate. And then when you cut it, make sure that your tips are really sharp on your compasses so that they actually cut a line in the wood, or you got a big piece of marble or whatever you're using. You know, you can use, I think one time we did it and had a big piece of plastic like you put on a countertop, you know, to glue down that laminate stuff. And then you actually, you know, would cut a line in it, and it would actually cut a groove with that sharp, and it would do it a little more accurately than it will on the wood with the wood fibers tearing. But when you're cutting a point and you have a very good understanding of where it should be, because it's in a series that makes sense. Going from here to her elbow is completely different, okay? But going from this feather to the next feather to the next feather, I can look at this and I can pretty much see the elevations, and I can see the position left to right, where it should be, and so I got a good idea. If you have a couple of stripes, you know, and say you swing it, and you swing, and you swing, and you swing, and and you cut a little bit, and you realize that from a previous cut, you should be seeing a lot of movement. There's a really good chance that one of your compasses, or more, you could have 2 or 3, all 3 of them could be wrong. There's a really good chance that at least one of your compasses is wrong, especially if there's one line that doesn't move, because if that line is longer or shorter, it's not going to agree and react in the manner that you'll expect it to with the others coming together. Okay, because the others, you may see them moving, you know, this shooting these, the points from her head, they're basically flat. Okay, they're not going to move. There's not going to be a lot of change. It's only going down just a little bit, and it's barely going to change. They're not quite flat because that's lower, but there's not going to be a lot of progress forward. Now, these points over here, like this point off of her knee, is coming down, and it's going to travel a lot because it's moving down like this. So if you see 2 of them, and like on this one, I shot, this was really tight, and this one was really tight, and I still couldn't get an agreement where I wanted it to, and so I went back and double checked everything, and my long compass wasn't quite right. It was just off by just a little bit on the triangle. And you don't understand how, you'll start understanding how accurate the triangle is when you see a swipe on your triangle that's like a 1/16 of an inch off. You know, it seems like it's just the width of the line off or whatever. And then you capture that with the next compass to be able to transfer it to the job. That can make that compass long or short, and the line won't move in relationship to the other 2 the same way. And I realize it should, because they're all moving, but they don't progress together like they should. They're moved more in parallel, because it's never going to meet. And so that agreement isn't enhanced as you approach that point, because you don't have 3 lines moving towards each other. You've got 2 that may be moving, and then one that's over here saying, yeah, I don't care what y'all are doing, I'm doing my own thing. And so it's never going to agree. And so if you start cutting something, and you know, you can look at this up high, you need to check your compasses really well when you take a measurement. But when you start cutting and you have 2 lines that seem to react very favorably to what you're doing, and one that is totally independent of it, there's a good chance that one is off. And it may be a matter of you bump the compass coming over. That's why you keep your original compass to proof it, to check it. You know, or you may have measured it wrong off the model or whatever. It doesn't really matter. You have to fix it. So give that a try. When you get the compasses right, like they're supposed to be, just like I did before, it's pretty satisfying when you can clip into a point and you get a perfect fit from 3 different compasses, and you know, you don't have some fancy apparatus. These are just 3 very basic pieces of equipment, you know, that, you know, maybe you made yourself like I did, and they all fit. and it's just really cool, okay? Back to cutting. While you're at it, make sure that, like I mentioned, keeping your tips sharp. They need to be like a needle. I mean, when I say they'll stab your foot, they need to stab your foot. Remember, a file takes off a lot of material, so you may not want to do too much with the file. The only thing I really try to do with a file, the problem is if you narrow the tip too much, they bend very easily. Take an old stone, and a green wheel isn't ideal for steel, but it'll go slow. If you have Italian compasses, they may be shaped a little differently than the beam compasses that you make. Remember, what they need to do is that when you swipe it on the board, they need to cut a line, okay, so that the fibers of the wood don't pull it and twist it and make it go in the, change the dimension that you're trying to capture. So when I'm sharpening them, like especially on my beam compasses, I like to narrow it so it's kind of like a knife across the edge, so that the edges are both narrow. So it goes down, tapers down, so that it tends to cut. These aren't really ever, unless they've been reworked, they generally are shaped the opposite way. So you just have to keep them pretty sharp. And resist the urge to look at these old brown, rusty looking whatever calipers, compasses, to strip them all off and make them all shiny. Because what it'll do is they'll rust. This old rust is very stable. And I've read about what the iron oxide is and what state they call it. I don't remember. But it makes a very durable, in a relatively inert coating on these. So don't remove it, because it took years and years for it to form. And when you take it off, then they're going to actively rust. It'll be that nice bright orange rust that's easy to wipe off with your hand. But keep everything really sharp and sharpen in a way that it won't deform or deflect. I usually don't use the file on them too much. I'd rather just do it with a stone. But if you're doing wood, you want this to cut the wood fibers. And I don't really need to sharpen all my compasses, because there's some that I'm using a lot. I mean, there's some I'm already using. There's half a dozen or 8 that I'm pretty much using. And the rest of them, unless I end up picking them up, I probably won't sharpen them right now for this project. That's about it. I think we got enough to make a video, and we'll wrap this one up. I'll keep pointing. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.